Mike Hunt was, by his own admission, a walking contradiction. At 21, he possessed the skills to dismantle a man twice his size with his bare hands, a knowledge of firearms that would make a Marine sergeant blush, and a wit so sharp it could draw blood. He was a mercenary, a ghost in the system, a problem solver for those with enough money and not enough scruples. And yet, for all his lethal competence, he was crippled by a single, all-consuming, humiliating reality. He was a virgin. It wasn't for lack of trying. Mike's libido was a roaring furnace in the basement of his soul, and his mouth was the perpetually open flue. He saw the world through a lens of unfulfilled desire, every interaction with a woman filtered through a single, desperate question. Could this be the one? His current contract had brought him to the rain-slicked, neon-drenched city of Veridia, a place where the supernatural bled into the mundane like ink on wet paper. He was sitting in a dimly lit bar called the Rusty Nail, the air thick with the smell of stale beer and desperation. His target, a smuggler named Gregor, was late. "Another one," Mike said to the bartender, a hulking man with a face like a clenched fist, sliding his empty glass across the polished wood. The bartender grunted, pouring a generous measure of amber whiskey. "You waiting for someone?" "Gregor. Supposed to be here 20 minutes ago," Mike said, forcing a grin. "Guess his watch is running on fuck me o'clock. Must be nice, right? Getting some?" "Me, I'm running on a permanent dry spell. My dick's so lonely it started sending smoke signals." The bartender stared, his expression unchanging. Mike sighed. His jokes, his constant nervous chatter, it was a shield. The louder he was, the quieter the screaming emptiness inside him felt. He scanned the bar, his eyes, a piercing blue that could be either charming or chilling, landing on a woman sitting alone in a booth. She was stunning. A cascade of fiery red hair framed a face of sharp, elegant angles. She wore a black leather jacket over a tight-fitting top, and her legs, crossed beneath the table, seemed to go on for miles. Asuka, he'd seen her around. A freelance operative, dangerous, brilliant, and utterly out of his league. "Fuck it," he muttered, grabbing his drink. "Fortune favors the bold, and my dick favors any port in a storm." He slid into the booth opposite her. "Well, hello there. You come here often. Or am I just the luckiest guy alive to witness such a devastatingly beautiful sight?" Asuka didn't even look up from the data slate she was studying. "Piss off, Hunt. You know my name." "I'm flattered." "See, I was just thinking, a woman of your obvious talents must get lonely. A high-caliber individual needs a high-caliber companion. And let me tell you, I'm locked and loaded." She finally looked up, her eyes like chips of green ice. I said, "Piss off. Your juvenile attempts at flirtation are as pathetic as your reputation is concerning." Ouch. Right in the ego. But hey, I like a woman with fire. Makes the eventual surrender so much sweeter. Imagine it, Asuka. You, me, a locked door. My hands on that perfect ass pulling you against me. I'd make you scream my name so loud the neighbors would call the cops. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Asuka's lips. She leaned forward, her voice a venomous whisper. "Mike, if you ever get that close to me, the only thing screaming will be you, when I rip your cock off and shove it down your throat. Now for the last time, get the fuck out of my booth before I redecorate this bar with your intestines." Mike's grin didn't falter, but a cold knot tightened in his stomach. He stood up, giving a mock bow. "The lady doth protest too much, methinks. The offer stands. This dick isn't going to suck itself." He returned to the bar, the familiar sting of rejection a bitter taste in his mouth. It was always the same. The jokes, the bravado, the explicit promises of what he could do with his admittedly well-endowed equipment, it all just pushed them further away. He didn't understand. He was offering them pleasure and escape. What was so wrong with wanting to feel a woman's warmth, to hear her moan, to feel her climax around him? Gregor finally arrived, a sweaty, nervous man with shifty eyes. The exchange was quick and professional. Money for information. As Mike stood to leave, Gregor grabbed his arm. "Hey, I hear you're a guy who finds things. People." "Sometimes," Mike said, his tone now all business. "My daughter, Emily," Gregor whispered, his eyes pleading. "She's different. Got mixed up with the wrong crowd. They say she's with a cult in the old sewers beneath the Blackwood district. Find her, bring her back. I'll pay you double." Mike looked at the man's desperate face and saw an opportunity. Not for money, but for something else. A daughter. A girl in trouble. A classic damsel in distress scenario. The hero gets the girl. It was perfect. "Consider it done," Mike said, a new, unsettling energy in his voice. The sewers of Veridia were a forgotten world. A labyrinth of brick and slime that echoed with the drip of water and the scuttling of things best left unseen. Mike moved through the tunnels with practiced silence, his heavy boots making no sound on the damp stone. The air was thick with the smell of decay and something else. Something metallic and sweet, like old blood and incense. He found the cult's entrance hidden behind a false wall, a carved stone archway that led into a wider, torchlit cavern. He peered inside. Dozens of figures in dark robes knelt before a crude altar, upon which stood a woman. She was ethereal, her skin pale as moonlight, her hair a silvery cascade. Delicate, iridescent wings like those of a dragonfly were folded against her back. A fairy, a real live fairy. Mike's breath caught in his throat. His mind, ever the traitor, immediately conjured an image of her beneath him, those wings fluttering with ecstasy, her tiny, perfect cries echoing in the chamber. Her pussy would probably taste like honey, he thought, a lewd grin spreading across his face. He shook his head, trying to focus. He scanned the kneeling figures and spotted her. Emily. Gregor had shown him a picture. A plain girl with mousy brown hair and wide, fearful eyes. She looked terrified. The fairy, who he heard the cultists call Angelina, was speaking in a voice like chiming bells. "In with the final offering, the gate will open, and the glorious emptiness shall be made whole." Mike didn't care about the glorious emptiness. He saw his chance. A distraction. He raised his custom-built pistol and fired a single shot into the ceiling. The roar was deafening in the enclosed space. Chunks of rock rained down. "Party's over, folks," he yelled, stepping into the light. "This is a raid. Everyone keep your hands where I can see them, especially the ladies. I'm conducting a very thorough search for contraband." Chaos erupted. Cultists scrambled, drawing hidden weapons. Mike moved like a dancer, a whirlwind of controlled violence. He disarmed one man with a sharp twist of the wrist, elbowed another in the throat, and put a bullet through the knee of a third. "Come on, you bastards," he laughed, ducking under a swinging blade. "Is that all you've got? My grandmother hits harder, and she's been dead for a decade." He fought his way toward the altar. Angelina watched him, her expression unreadable. Emily cowered behind her. "Stay back." "Mortal," Angelina said, her voice losing its chime, gaining an edge of steel. "Sorry, Tinkerbell. But the damsel and I have a date," Mike said, grabbing Emily's arm. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Uncle Mike's here. I'll get you out of this. And maybe later, you can show your gratitude." He winked. Emily recoiled from him as if he were one of the monsters. A cultist lunged at him with a dagger. Mike sidestepped, grabbed the man's head, and slammed it into the stone altar with a sickening crack. He turned back to Angelina. "You too, gorgeous. A creature like you shouldn't be wasting time with these losers. I've got a 5-star hotel room with a king-sized bed. I bet those wings are sensitive. I'd lick them for hours before I even got to your sweet little fairy pussy." Angelina's eyes flashed with fury. She raised a hand and a wave of force slammed into Mike's chest, throwing him back 10 feet. He hit the ground hard, the wind knocked out of him. "You defile this sacred space with your filth," she hissed. "Filth is my middle name, baby." He coughed out, scrambling to his feet. He fired 2 shots at her, but they sizzled and melted in midair before they could reach her. This was a problem. A big magical problem. He grabbed Emily again. "Time to go." He fought his way out of the cavern, dragging the screaming girl behind him. He didn't look back at the fairy, but her image was burned into his mind. Her perfect face, her slender body, the raw, untamed power she possessed. The obsession, which had been a constant hum, now became a screaming siren. He didn't just want sex anymore. He wanted her. He wanted to conquer that power, to dominate it, to make it his. He returned Emily to a grateful Gregor, collected his payment, and refused the bonus. He had gotten something far more valuable, a new purpose. The next few weeks were a descent. Mike's hunt for carnal knowledge became a specific, terrifying fixation on the supernatural. He spent his days and nights in the city's occult underbelly, spending every credit he earned on information, artifacts, anything that could give him an edge. He was no longer the talkative mercenary. He was a silent, single-minded predator. He tracked a werecat named Roxy to a fighting pit in the industrial sector. She was all feral grace and coiled muscle, with slitted yellow eyes and a tail that twitched with predatory intent. She was fighting for sport, tearing through opponents with claws and fangs. Mike watched from the shadows, his heart pounding. He imagined pinning her down, her animalistic strength struggling against his, her feral snarls turning into moans of pleasure. I'd take her from behind, right in her tight ass, he thought, his pants growing uncomfortably tight. She'd scratch my back to ribbons and I'd fucking love it. After her fight, he cornered her in the locker room. Roxy, right? Name's Mike Hunt. I'm a big fan of your work. She turned, wiping blood from her lip. What do you want, human? Just a moment of your time. I've got a proposition. I'm a man of unique tastes. I like a woman with bite. I want to feel those claws on my back while I'm buried deep inside you. I want to make you orgasm so hard you forget how to meow. Roxy stared at him, her expression one of pure, unadulterated disgust. You are a sick little puppy. Get out of my sight before I decide to neuter you. I'm not taking no for an answer, Mike said, his voice dropping, losing all its humorous inflection. It was flat, cold, and terrifying. He lunged at her. She was faster, her claws raking across his chest, tearing through his jacket and shirt. He grunted in pain but didn't stop. He was stronger. He slammed her against the lockers, his hands gripping her wrists. He leaned in, his mouth near her ear. Fight all you want, kitten. It just makes my dick harder. He tried to force a kiss on her. Roxy, in a move of pure desperation, headbutted him squarely in the nose. There was a wet crunch, and stars exploded behind his eyes. He staggered back, blood pouring down his face. She was gone in an instant. He stood there, panting, blood dripping onto the concrete floor. The pain was immense, but it was nothing compared to the fury of being denied. Again. He looked at his bloody reflection in a broken mirror. His face was a mask of rage and twisted desire. The funny, talkative Mike Hunt was gone, eroded away by the acid of his obsession. He found a back-alley sorcerer, a wizened old man who smelled of mothballs and grave dirt. I need a potion, Mike said, his voice raspy. Something to persuade. To make a supernatural being compliant. The sorcerer eyed him warily. Such magics are dark, boy. They have a cost. They twist the user as much as the target. I don't care about the cost, Mike said, slapping a thick stack of credits on the table. I want what I want. The sorcerer gave him a small crystal vial filled with a viscous purple liquid. A single drop will cloud the will. 2 will bend it. 3 will break it completely. But be warned, the broken can rarely be put back together. Mike took the vial, holding it up to the light. This was it, the key. He thought of Angelina, of her defiance turning to submission. He imagined her begging him, "Harder, Mike. Please, fuck me harder." He tracked her to a secluded glen in one of Veridia's hidden magical pockets. It was a place of breathtaking beauty, with glowing flowers and a crystal-clear pond. Angelina was there, kneeling by the water, her wings shimmering. Mike moved silently, the potion clutched in his hand. He was almost upon her when she spoke without turning. I can smell the corruption on you, mortal. The stink of dark magic and a rotten soul. No more games, Angelina, Mike said, stepping into the clearing. It's time you and I got acquainted. Properly. He uncorked the vial. She turned, her eyes wide, not with fear, but with pity. You poor, lost creature. This path leads only to your own destruction. Wrong, Mike snarled. It leads to you, screaming my name as you come on my cock. He lunged, intending to force the liquid down her throat. But Angelina was ready. She didn't try to fight him physically. Instead, she spread her arms, and her wings flared with blinding light. The very air around Mike thickened, becoming like syrup. He was frozen in mid-lunge, his muscles straining uselessly. "You seek connection, but you understand only possession," her voice echoed in his mind. "You crave pleasure, but you offer only pain. I will show you the truth you so desperately run from." The light from her wings enveloped him. It wasn't a physical attack. It was a psychic one. It bypassed his flesh and bone and dove straight into the core of his being, into the screaming, empty void of his obsession. He was bombarded with sensations, but they were not the ones he desired. He felt the revulsion of every woman he had ever leered at, a tidal wave of disgust that washed over him, making him gag. He heard the silent pleas for him to just go away. He saw himself through Asuka's eyes, a pathetic, vulgar boy. Through Roxy's, a dangerous predator to be put down. Through Emily's, a monster no better than the cultists. He felt the profound, soul-crushing loneliness that was the true source of his hunger. The jokes, the bravado, the explicit talk. It was all a frantic, desperate performance to hide the fact that he was utterly, terminally alone. And then, Angelina showed him the ultimate horror. She showed him a vision of his success. He saw himself, having forced the potion down her throat. He saw her, her will broken, her eyes empty, submitting to him. He saw himself taking her, his body moving on top of hers, but there was no passion, no pleasure, no connection. It was a hollow, mechanical act. Her body was there, but she was gone. It was like fucking a beautiful, warm corpse. The emptiness inside him didn't shrink. It grew, vast and cold and infinite. He had what he wanted, and it was nothing. It was less than nothing. A scream tore from Mike's throat, a raw, ragged sound of pure, unadulterated terror. It wasn't a scream of physical pain, but of existential dread. He was staring into the abyss of his own soul, and it was staring back, hungry and bottomless. The light faded. Mike collapsed to the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. The vial of potion slipped from his fingers and shattered on a rock, the purple liquid hissing as it seeped into the earth. Angelina looked down at him, her expression still pitying. "The obsession is broken. The hunger remains, but now you see it for what it is. The choice of what to do with that knowledge is yours." She unfolded her wings, and with a soft chime, vanished into the twilight. Mike lay there for a long time, curled into a fetal position in the beautiful glen. The compulsive need was gone, the psychic scream silenced, but in its place was a cold, clear understanding. He had been trying to fill a hole in his soul with a physical act, and it was like trying to fill the ocean with a thimble. He eventually stood up, his body aching with a fatigue deeper than any he had ever known. He walked out of the glen and back into the grim reality of Veridia. He saw a woman at a street corner waiting for a cab. She was pretty. For a fleeting second, the old thought pattern tried to fire. I wonder what she's like in bed. But it was just a thought. A quiet passing notion. There was no compulsion behind it, no hunger. Just a simple, almost clinical observation. The horror wasn't in being denied what he wanted. The horror was in finally understanding that getting it would have destroyed him. He was still Mike Hunt. He was still a virgin. He was still a mercenary. But the talkative, joke-cracking facade was gone, shattered by the truth. He walked down the rain-slicked street, a silent, solitary figure, forever haunted not by what he couldn't have, but by the terrifying vision of what it would have cost him if he had. The real monster hadn't been in the sewers or the glens. It had been inside him all along, and he had finally seen its face. And that was a horror from which he would never, ever recover.